topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast, broadcasting live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. This week and every week, we will reach for a higher purpose in money and life, as well as a focus on health and wellness. Now, let's join your host, Bonita Bell Anderson, as together we start with Asking Good Questions.
Hello and welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast. We are definitely going to ask some good questions and have some good answers as well today. I'm coming at you from Hawaii, where I'm serving a mission with my husband, and we're here for another 6 months or so. But in the meantime, technology does its thing. You can do this wherever you are in the world. So with that, I'd like to invite my guest today to the podcast stage. His name is Mike Dwyer. Mike is, I'm so happy that you're here, Mike.
Well, thank you, Bonita.
Okay, so he has had quite an impressive career. He had actually, he and his people had reached out to me and saying that they thought that Mike might be an interesting choice for the podcast. He's done a lot of things in the public and the private and public sectors. He's created something called Emplana Career, and he's actually in Boston, Massachusetts. So we are several time zones apart. And he has done a lot of things with thinking about people that are in the 50, 60, 70 age group. How do they transition to a whole nother segment of life? And so he's thought about navigating job markets. He's thought about intentional financial and life choices, which is a lot of things that what we talk about here. And he offers tools and insights and real world strategies to help you stay relevant and fulfilled. And so today we're going to talk about something he calls Harvest Your Dreams and redefining success beyond traditional retirement. I mean, I don't know, Mike, if there isn't even most people, it seems to be like I'm a good example. I wasn't ready to just sit and do nothing. I have a whole lifetime of experience. And so most people, I think, are like that. They're healthy, for the most part, wanting to just go out and continue to contribute. So, Mike, what inspired you to create Emplana and focus on helping people in their, what you call senior and Encore? I love that. Senior Encore. It's another stage of life.
Here. And I think the main driver is collaboration. For some reason, a lot of times I think people in the back of their mind, in fact, I don't know if I mentioned this to you when we talked before, Bonita. I once commissioned a small marketing study with some focus groups. It was really interesting. The takeaway from a couple of different age cohorts was that if I want to get in shape, you know how every New Year's we join the gym?
Oh, yeah.
I'm expecting to hire a trainer. But when it comes to job and career, you remember that Marlboro Man ad, the strong, silent type?
Yeah.
Right. And, it turns out that Emplana Career, if you're familiar, you are familiar with stuff like this with your financial background. It's a DBA, doing business as. The underlying company is called Career Collaboration, LLC. So okay. I don't think I could say it any stronger. The whole point is to join together. And, that in terms of, you mentioned practical tools and stuff. When I'm working with somebody, right away I'm saying, who's your peeps? Do you have a personal board? Do you have a mentor? And what would that look like? And could we do a trial run or a little pilot? So just to start the conversation here, very much believing in collaboration and seeing that people don't always know how to go about collaborating on a job or a job search or a job change or a career. And I think one of the things we do for each other, let's take this personal board. You probably want someone who knows you well enough. In fact, I was talking to someone I respect who said, yeah, if you're going to have a personal board, at least one of the people might not even know what you do, but they know you. They know when you're being timid. They know when you're being maybe too bold. And so if you can get a little cohort together that's checking in with you, making sure you're thinking a little bit out of the box. I always think of things in terms of landscapes or range of outcomes. And, I think that's a very playful. Well, I've talked for a few minutes, so surely time to stop for a sec. But between
you make me think of the reason that this podcast is called Ask Good Questions is because in my life, when I go back and look at all the big mistakes that I've made in my life, it's because I didn't ask good questions, and I didn't ask about what are the range of outcomes that could happen. I mean, it's not even something that entered my mind. So I'm thinking, what would be interesting would be if people use the personal board concept, if they were retiring from a job, but they wanted to start a business. Wouldn't it be interesting to have a group of people together to brainstorm what that business might look like?
Absolutely. And, when I talk about a range of outcomes, it could be anything from a dog walking business, because now I can write my novel. It could be, I've been really lately, I'm a nerd, and I've been really focusing on freelance platforms. And I've got some things that I think are some pretty interesting statistics. Turns out that on Upwork, 9% of the talent is boomers. So that's right. I mean, that's intriguing to me. It's not a majority, but you won't be lonely. So when we think about that landscape, that range of outcomes, we want to be thinking everything from the dog walking business to putting your toe in the water with a service offering to a part-time job to starting a business. I was nice enough to be a guest. I was lucky enough to be a guest on a podcast with someone who does franchises. And this person is so deeply expert at the enormous range. And that might not be for everyone. But you know what? Once I got talking to her, it goes everything from vending machines to Orange Theory fitness clubs. So now I'm gonna hit the tennis ball back to you, Bonita, and say, even in these last couple of minutes now, we're starting to look across a landscape. We're really thinking about a lot of possibilities, and you would want your peeps to help you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. I think back to when I've got 3 daughters. When they were teenagers, we did a vending machine business. And my goal, I've always been kind of this little entrepreneurial son of a gun. I've always been somebody that's done marketing businesses at home through the years and a variety of things. But my goal was to teach them. And so in collaboration, so my approach has always been to how can I help somebody else that's in my family? Actually, I've got a granddaughter now of one of, the oldest daughter of one of those daughters that did the vending machine business years ago, who we're going to do some low content books. She's this artist that is wonderful, wonderful artist. But I think it does bring up a whole range of ideas on where could this go. If I was to think about doing something, I would like to ask you, you've said in a lot of different ways that the best career chapter might still be ahead of you, right? And so what does that mean to you personally? Because you've done a lot of things in your life. How did your thinking happen so that you got to where you are doing this now?
Well, for me, I never left. And that's one of the reasons I can work with seniors. And, you know, I don't have to claim any special talent. Showing up year after year, decade after decade, and keeping up on things. I mean, right in the last 6 months, I'm working on cloud computing, some cybersecurity, a little bit of AI. So, one of the things, you know, as we think about these different options and why you want some help, why you want your people or your board, one of the things you want to do is a lot of seniors are afraid of tech. And let's all admit, a 13-year-old can configure your phone faster than any of us. I don't care how
Yeah.
good you are, right? But on the
We
other
didn't.
hand, right, that's just how it is. But, you know, one of the things when I see somebody who's talking about staying in the workforce, re-entering it, um, in today's world, you need to be able to use what I'll call collaboration technologies. And
Mhm.
if you've used, I don't care if it's Google Suite, Teams, Slack, and you know, whenever I'll tell you what, whenever I hear someone being an outsider looking in, I want to turn that around. So I have under the heading of some networking ideas. Think about this kind of a lab. What if a few friends download a copy of Slack and organize a golf tournament or a birthday party or a trip? So the purpose of that is that even in play, we can be going from, boy, I don't know what this stuff is, to, you know, here's the part I like, here's the part I need to learn some more. I want to change the dialogue so that you're getting this feeling of, geez, you know, there's a human noise we make. It goes like, huh. And it says, that's kind of interesting and it's intriguing and
Yeah.
maybe even possible. And I think when you're working, when you surround yourself with people, and I mean, one of the things I can always reassure the podcast host is there's no heavy sales or arm twisting. I have a day job, consulting practice. Um, Somebody wants to leave a note on the Emplana website and you see if we get together, great. But I actually pretty happy if someone ever sent along something that said, I was listening to this podcast. I asked some good questions. I put a few people together and they helped me think about something that I'm still doing and it worked out. Wouldn't that
Cool.
be nice?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me ask you a little bit different. How can someone? Okay. So let's say, okay, Mike, you sold me. I'm going to get together at that board and I'm going to think about this. How can somebody identify what their next chapter is going to look like after decades in a traditional career? What would be the things that they would do to identify with that? Maybe they're kind of unclear.
Well, you know, the first thing I think you want to do is I see two dynamics. One is retrospective and one is prospective. One is reflective. So, you know, funny, neither one of us is 20 years old. And if we were to look through our LinkedIn, our resume, if we look through some old project files, I really do encourage people to take a time box. No down the rabbit holes, no looking on, you know, social media forever, but a really purposive look. And the kind of things I'm looking for is, you know, people will tell me when they get thinking and looking back, you know, I actually did facilitate meetings or I've written a ton of request proposals. And as soon as you can start, because one of the things about today's world and about what you just said, the person who's got decades, one of the things we want to be a little bit playful about is you can think of a job as a monolith or a molecule, a couple of different models. And in that job are atoms, are things you can break off. And, you know, today, right now, this very minute, job market's bleak. I mean, there's headlines all over the place, so longer, you know, there's bots discarding resumes. So, you know, you
Yeah.
don't want to just waste your time. But if you're looking back and realizing that, you know, there's some people I've been meaning to get in touch with, or that little company, I wonder if it's still around. Those
Mm-hmm.
are really good dynamics. So that's the retrospective part, is using your biography to get some nuggets. And one of the things I really encourage people to do is to value their musings and thoughts. Once every couple of months, I give somebody a $30 moleskin notebook. And this is because I've heard them say some things that were valuable and just went into the air. and I won't have it. And what happens is, when, I don't care if you use Notepad, dictaphone, for God's sakes, if we want to show our age, or this
Yeah.
little moleskin notebook. What happens is, when you record your thoughts, when you think and remember about stuff I've done, when you come back and look at that, there's a wonderful ordering that happens. As you look through that, you go, okay, that was a nice thought. But then you see some other things and you say, you know what, that's actually intriguing. This is worth more. So already, I think we're doing something healthy. We're going from a blank page, an empty slate, to some retrospective and reflective work that says, what did I find interesting? What did I do that was, maybe something I could break away or have fun with?
Right.
I met somebody who on a podcast who ran throw birthday party for a little kids business, and they had a ball with it for years.
Yeah.
There's a million things. If it's all right, I'll give you one more example.
Yeah.
So my wife bought me a nice drone a few years ago, and I did a bad thing. I let it collect dust for a
A-
couple years.
A drone.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I looked at this and I said, no, this isn't right. And so I took a Saturday or two. I did the YouTubes, and sure enough, next thing you know, I'm taking pictures of the backyard. My son has a property in the more rural with, maybe 18 acres. We're taking pictures of the goat pen. Now, where does this go? Well, once you start doing stuff, I showed a picture of my backyard to a friend at church, and she said, would you take some pictures of my next social gathering?
I saw that coming.
And if you can't see with it, so then what happened is, now the wife says, okay, I finally woke the nerd up. He's underway. So for the next birthday, I get 2 books, 2 nice little paperbacks in color. The first one is How to Be a Better Drone Photographer. And make sure you put a street sign or a person or something that shows scale and all this good advice. But then the second one, drones can help the town figure out if the yellow lines in the parking lot were in fact done straight, and you should pay the vendor. I mean, there's a million things
Wow.
you can do. So I hope you're getting a flavor. Now, I'm sitting in a co-working space that has 300 companies, from startups to nonprofits to insurance tech platforms with 70 staff that have been going for years, to an AI startup that manages utility grids. So, I hope that you're seeing what can happen when people start talking and exploring and brainstorming.
Well, what do you think are the mind shifts that are most important for redefining what this would look like for somebody?
Well, you know what? I think the first thing you have to do is let go of some things. The person who introduced us, Steve Dubin, he's really been around the block. He's run commercial networking. He's just a marketing savvy guy. I think you two would have a lot of fun, by the way, but if that ever develops. But you know what? We were talking sometimes about sometimes you might have to get used to having a much younger boss. And what's wrong with that? I was at something recently where there was a very polished 30-year-old was leading a seminar on process improvement in the public sector, and there was probably 25 people who'd gone through the course, and they at the end of the graduation, the bosses and colleagues had been invited, and it was a bit of a good do. And I remember asking this 30-year-old whether she had an MPP, Master of Public Policy, or an MPA, Master of Public Administration. She said both. So I think what the point of that story is, and what Steve and I kick around is, he put it one time, even if the person doesn't look old enough to shave, don't assume they don't know what they're doing. And, and I'll tell you what, another thing, when you work with somebody, let's take someone who's been in middle management and banking. This is an actual story I'm familiar with.
Okay.
And I remember talking to that person and say, we're going to have some fun today because we're going to tickle your fancy a little bit. Should you stretch one last time for a more executive job? Or should you consolidate around being a line professional because you would be like the model of it? And I think those are fun concepts that we're imagining, and they're very much let go concepts, because what you're in that conversation, you're not saying I'm doing what I did before at the same level, with I got 3 more reports or something. So I just will throw all that to you, that you'd want to be in this conversation. You'd want to let go and let your mind go. And because you've got such financial background, and there was somewhere in this earlier you were mentioning something about, I don't think you used the word grounded, but maybe practical or something. I mentioned these freelance platforms because you don't have to go raise $3 million and buy a building or patent something in biotech. I mean, you can do a little tiny offering for 10 hours a week without stopping what you're doing now, whether that's being retired or working full time. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, now, so let's move into, you've talked a little bit about and mentioned it a couple of times, technology. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people in this stage of life feel like they're getting left behind by technology because they didn't really grow up with it. Right. So what are some practical steps that you can think of to bridge that gap?
Well, let's take artificial intelligence.
Okay. Which I'm taking a course right now. I'm in the middle of a course. I'm in the middle of a course to learn how to create my own clone and to make and ask it. The biggest thing that I'm doing is, and so I'm in the middle of learning and figuring out how to give artificial intelligence better prompts. So anyway.
No, that is such a relevant, I couldn't have asked for a better example. So what I did, nerd that I am, and being in Boston in 2019, I signed up for, it cost me $3,000, but I got a short course out of MIT Sloan that was, what's the business implications of AI? Probably 30% of the content was done by Daniela Roos, who's the head of the CSAIL Computer Science and AI Lab at MIT. So, like, if you think about it, that's a bit of a big step, but it's by no means a sell the house step. It's not incredibly risky. It cost a few. It was incredible, and I have been building on what I learned in that for the last 6 years. So, let's take the cohort. Let's take our cohort. I started to mention. I've actually told this story a couple times. Many Friday nights ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, we're out at one of those pop-up craft brew places that are all over there, and I'm with a few very close friends that I've known for years, and the talk turns to AI, and here's what they say. One of them says, yeah, I talked to the IT guy, and another one says, I read an article, and I actually got mad at my friends. Stop it. Download. Play. Go into ChatGPT and ask it to help you write something, or and I have a very astute, a very successful and astute financial contact that I know of, a bit of a friend, and we were talking about somebody who is using AI tools, but is still somehow apprehensive that they're being left behind. And my financial friend said, no, she's at the table. She's part of the experiment. So, Bonita, whether you're saying, I want to set up a clone, teach it to prompt, I use ChatGPT. There is no way I'm writing a request for quote, what a program management office staffing picture should look like. I want to be editing 3 to 5 pages within 3 minutes. That's how I roll. And so, whether you apologize for bringing up what I thought was the perfect example. Get out there and try something. Take a course at the library. I mean, really, they make it so easy now. Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT.
Yep.
I mean, I get the paid version of a couple of them, but you can get the free. And so when a person says, I downloaded a collaboration tool like Slack, or a buddy and I used Teams to plan some little getaway or something, just so we could give it a try. It doesn't take too many turns on the board If you're doing a little of that, using ChatGPT to help produce something, all of a sudden you've gone from outside looking in to inside, as my friend put it,
Yeah.
part of the experiment.
Do you know what I did yesterday? I had my GPT clone help me create a real personalized menu. I mean, so I'm learning about ways that you can use artificial intelligence just in everyday life, which I find super cool.
I couldn't be happier, because I'm sure you'd be polite and listen, but the fact that you're saying, "Oh no, I'm doing something similar," if we had that apprehensive person, the third person here that we're trying to help, if they wouldn't get a little confidence, I mean, if I have to, I'll grab their fingers and put it on a mouse and show them where to click. But I mean, this conversation is good because you're showing what you're doing with it, what I'm doing with it, and that moves you into the conversation, because then when you hear about, I just read an article at Wall Street Journal about employees who, everybody needs their own brand today, and a lot of things we didn't have to worry about coming up. One of the things you can adopt in an organization, especially a company, a corporation, is that you can be somebody who can help the people around you use these tools to do their jobs better. You get a few laps around the track on that, and you got a story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sticking to the cohort. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Let's pivot a little bit, because I watched the time, and these conversations just go so fast. So you have worked extensively in cybersecurity, right? So
yes.
What are some common online risks that you see older professionals or just anybody at this stage of life running into and watching out for?
Well, you know what? You really got to know what you're clicking on. Now, mind you, the cybersecurity I've done has been more corporate and public sector agency, where I've been a point person on. I've done. You know what? By the way, though, how can you get into something? It turns out that even a robotics company needs procurement. And the way I got started into cybersecurity was no more than offering to help do some scheduling, some procurement, score an RFP. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm more on that end. But I think the number one thing, whether you're a user in a corporation, whether you're a private individual, if you go to click on something and it is not 100% solid, it needs to look like it did yesterday. It needs to say acme.com or Amazon.com, not some strange amalgamation of or misspellings. And the other thing too about clicking is if it says you must, it's urgent, and there's a threat. Let's be honest. The registry of motor vehicles can be heavy-handed, or whatever you call them in wherever you are, but they're not going to call you up and say, if you don't click on this, we're going to do something dastardly to you. And so you really want to be getting this mindset that says, if it's a excessively urgent, and you're being asked to share things or give money, and then right away, full stop. You've had some training and done some work here too. One of the things you can always do is take a look at the URL and paste it into a notepad or something, and really see, and if it turns out it's a bunch of strange misspellings and XYZ wherever type thing, then full stop. But really, the most important thing I think to say is to make sure that as soon as you see pressure, urgency, a request to share money or information, then you got to just train yourself to come to a stop and really go slow. How's that sound?
That sounds great. And I'm also going to say, so Mike, we're sitting here having a conversation about all of this. What are maybe 3 different things that you do personally to protect yourself against cybersecurity risks that are out there? What are some habits What are some habits that are like simple, ongoing habits that you have?
Do you know? It's really hard to make me click now. um, I mean, I'm pretty good. You know, you've got some background, but I remember getting a message on my telephone that looked like it was from an official public sector agency that I do things with, and basically, you shouldn't be clicking on stuff. It's just not how it works. You don't need to hit a button. um, the normal discourse is to get an email that asks for something. You can respond by email, and if you don't like the smell of it, you make a phone call until you hear a
Right.
counterparty.
Right.
I know some of the investment people. You know, I do a lot of public sector, and I remember being on a call with Treasury of the Treasury Department at City Hall, Boston, and that's what they do when they get a request for an investment call or one of the other things. They call until they hear what they call a known voice.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because banks and stuff, they're not going to be sending you a text message. You call the bank and say, hey, is my account really going to be shut down? In almost 100% of the cases, they're not.
That's right. And, you know, there is, like, for instance, I had my church actually had a small account that we all forgot about, and we got a letter of dormancy, but that came in the mail. And, you know, you could call, and sure enough, it was on bank letterhead, and you called, and the receptionist said, you know, Bank ABC. So I think, you know, you asked me a few things like that. I think the first is really train yourself not to just click on the button or the link. You know, really stop and go. I think too, there's business of, you know, watching out for urgency.
Right.
But I also do. I don't know if it's the best thing that's out there, but I do have a LifeLock subscription. I do think that,
I do too. Me
you
too.
know, I think some of that stuff makes sense. You know, for
Yeah.
$25 a month or whatever it is, you're really getting quite a level of insurance. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Given your back again, I know you've got just a ton of finance background. The fact that you've got LifeLock makes me feel good too.
Okay. Well, so yeah, and anybody that's listening, this just came up organically. They're not, we're not involved with them.
Right. There's no sales commission.
No. So let's talk a little bit about community and connection. So you've talked about the power of community and how does staying socially and professionally connected how do you think that affects your sense of fulfillment? Because I think in a lot of cases, when people are making a big transition at this point in life, they're a little bit lost. So how would you say, what comes to mind if you think, how am I going to stay socially and professionally connected so that I have a sense of fulfillment?
Well, thank you. That's such a great question. I'm going to start by just focusing on professional networking. And
Okay.
what I like to do for people, I actually have a little booklet about this. I have a course that's registered with the Commonwealth here that's you can actually get reimbursed. And I'm not plugging. I'm just saying we've done some work on this. You know what I mean? And I've been able to get some grad students to help me and all. So let's have some fun for a minute. Some people are just so comfortable. They can go into that big noisy room with, you know, everybody caffeinated and they're good to go. But what if you're not? Well, there's a woman whose books I buy called Karen Wickery, and she was positioned. I met her at, you know, the Wired magazine. It's about as hip and tech as you can be. She did I went to a Wired conference a number of years ago, and she was a speaker, and she's just a gas, and she's got books on networking. And one of the things she says, now we're going to do is talk about this cohort, and we're not going to worry about the people who are just fine with 300 people at the Chamber of Commerce. They can take care of themselves. But what about the introvert? What about the person who hasn't done much of this? Well, let's work on that for a minute. Her one of her subtitles of her early versions of the book was something to the effect of the secret power of introverts. They love to listen. And that's a very disarming. Someone who's genuinely interested That is a very powerful dynamic. So here's, you mentioned about practical tips and stuff. If you're not sure where to place yourself, if you feel like, okay, I'm in the privacy of your living room or home office, you're saying, actually, I'm scared. Here's what you do. You can pick a scripted format. So instead of going to that Chamber of Commerce with 300 people trying to talk over each other, go to some place where there's a lecture you're interested with a Q&A afterwards. Now that is what I call a scripted format. You're seated, you get some information, and so what you're going to talk about in the Q&A requires no creativity or effort on your part. And I think what you want to do, one of the words I use in all this is intentional. Obviously, I use the word collaborative, but I think you really want to be intentional. And it's perfectly okay to say, wow, I have never really been good at this. I mean, I go out for a drink afterwards or something, but putting yourself in a position where you can start some professional networking, but doing it in a way like I described. It's a low key, kind of scripted, leads to a Q&A or something like that. That you do a couple of those, and all of a sudden you're not a newbie anymore, and then you can maybe up the game a little bit.
Well, you've talked about co-working spaces. I've also done that in the past with, having one of those a little place where I have access to a bunch of different things, and then being able to talk to all those fascinating people that are, also there at that co-working space. But the one that's relevant to me in this question is volunteer groups. Because of doing a senior mission here, and we're going to be here for like another 6 months, we have met all these fantastic people because of the volunteer groups, the Hawaii Food Bank. Oh my goodness, I've got some great friends there now that are all people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds. But the question that I'm trying to get at, because I'm thinking about how are things relating to me now at this stage of my life, I'm thinking about, how can co-working spaces, mentorship circles, or volunteer groups play a role in this new chapter?
Well, the first thing is the philosophers say, know thyself. If you are somebody who's bursting with ideas and confidence, well, go straight, skip, go find the personal board and start testing those ideas. But if that's not you, the idea that you can use some purposive networking, I always say that. I love your examples, Bonita. I'll tell you what, I stumbled on something maybe 10 years ago that next time would be intentional, and I'm trying to help people. So I decided my town has a form of government, town meeting. That's the legislative body. And I went for years and years, and they kept saying you should volunteer for something. And finally I said, I really should volunteer for something. So I put down in the talent blank, I got a master's in management, I'm comfortable in money, whatever it is. And I ended up being the chair of the audit committee. Now, aside from meeting some really cool business people, let me tell you what else happened that next time would be intentional. So it turns out I work in public sector in retirement and pension. And as the audit committee, we were on the receiving end of all the actuarial valuations, accounting statements for the town, for the retirement board. And so you want to talk about a different perspective, I would have paid for that. And so I'm so glad you brought up volunteer, because do some volunteering simply because you're being generous of soul and you don't know who you're going to meet. But you also can do some volunteering because you think, boy, I could actually pick up some skills or talk to people who are in a sector I'm interested in. I mean, and if you're willing to volunteer I come out of Ernst & Young and Deloitte. If you're a newbie at a big consulting firm, if you're willing to volunteer to help write proposals, you're going to meet people at all levels of the organization. You're going to lose a few weekends. It's going to be some hard, long hours, but in a few months, a couple of proposals, and suddenly people. Right. And so I'm picking up on your idea and really trying to grow it.
Well, I am we've been here for 6 months, and just the width and breadth of experiences we've had because of volunteering and serving in a lot of different capacities. I got to tell you, I have to tell you about one that happened 2 weeks ago. I got to volunteer with Travel Visions Aloha, which is a nonprofit for blind people. Guess what I got to do?
Goodness.
I got to go and be in a lagoon with dolphins and take this little blind gal in and meet a dolphin in a lagoon. And that was such a special experience because, again, it's a whole nother group of people I've never met. The blind people that were participating, they're all people that have lost their sight for one reason or another, but they're all people that have different life backgrounds. And then, of course, the volunteers. And, it's just gives you I think that volunteering and serving gives you a whole different perspective on life.
I love it.
So we are, oh, Mike, I can't believe it. We're running out of time. How do finances and purpose, we've talked about, finding purpose in a lot of different ways. How do you think finances and purpose kind of intersect during this transition?
Well, I'll tell you what, the words I've been using lately are intentional, collaborative, realistic, and nimble. And I think when you come around finance, you definitely want to be realistic. And if you need to get some of the peeps around you to help you, you really want to know the difference between I'm going to get a second mortgage and do something that's high risk versus I'm going to put my toe in the water on one of these freelance platforms. And so I think some financial discipline and some honest and some realistic look at your risk appetite and your context is probably a smart thing to do.
Yeah. Well, what do you think are some, I'm going to start wrapping up with, I like to give people some actionable steps, something that they can take away and do. What would you say would be some small confidence building wins that help people regain momentum when they're starting something new?
Well, I think the first thing they can do is pick up on this networking concept. And, I literally have a table in a little booklet that has 3 or 4 columns that goes from utterly safe to, okay, you'll have to do a little bit of conversational initiative to the highly caffeinated 300 person mix. I can't think of anything more important. I have this new thing I've been working on. It's not like it's anything fancy, but I call it topical networking. And I'm interested in a subject and I could take the course on LinkedIn, but maybe I can go to a lecture, a meetup at the library, a local university. And that topical networking, when you show up with a genuine interest and find some people who know something, that could help create some momentum. Right.
Wow. Well, part of our little title that we had for this podcast episode, Harvest Your Dreams. So if somebody's listening today, one of our listeners wants to, like you say, harvest your dreams, what's one step that they could take this week to begin?
I would offer two steps.
Okay.
One is
all right.
One is do some kind of networking. Start thinking about what's your comfort zone and go find something. Yeah. And the other one is begin that capture. Start looking back through old email systems, notes, clean up a file drawer of old projects. And what you're looking for are when you did something that was actually cool. And maybe it wasn't a primary job activity, but you enjoyed it. And, so if you were getting out there and meeting some new people once or twice a month and you were starting to harvest, and I like the word harvest because in order to be prospective, I think it's healthy to do a little reflection and retrospective.
You're planting seeds. Aren't you planting
exactly
seeds?
Right. That's right. So I think, I know you've been watching time. I know you're good at that. So I would say that if the person, again, I don't care if it's in a notepad on a computer, if it's in a moleskin book or a rolled up piece of paper, start capturing some things that intrigue you and organize them and go through them. And then at the same time, get yourself out there And Steve Dubin, the person who introduced it, he and I have this wonderful debate. He said, "Oh, you got to do something every week." I will actually be the other end of it. If you did 6 or 8 events a year, at the end of 2 years, you've done a ton of stuff, and you're not afraid anymore, and you've got contacts, and so let your listener season to taste. But I think those two things, starting to look back and in a way of harvesting what you've had, so you can turn it into your dream, and getting out there with some professional networking and some, whether volunteering, however, just getting out there. You get those two things going, I think you're getting underway.
Be on your way. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, so, and I just a reminder to everyone, on my website is a place where I have what I call bonus downloads. Mike's information will be there. There'll be like a little flyer with all of his information if you want to get in touch with him about any of this. And so with that, our time is gone, Mike. And so
well, thank you for making.
Yeah, and I just appreciate you being here with me. And I really feel like we've given some good value, and the people have some actionable steps that they can take to get out there and do something like this and get going on a whole nother adventure.
Well, thank you for being such a participant, not just a host.
Well, it's more fun that way.
Great.
All right. And with that, thank you so much for joining the Ask Good Questions podcast. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Today's episode is over, but we did ask good questions again, didn't we? Don't miss out as we broadcast live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. Join Benita Bell Anderson next week for more conversations with experts on finances, retirement, behavioral finance issues, health and wellness, and more. Until then, remember to ask good questions.